There was a time when Eminem was the one name nobody wanted tension with, no matter how famous they were. It didn't matter if you were a chart topper, a movie star, or a global brand. Crossing him publicly always came with consequences, not physical, but cultural. Lyrics, attention, pressure.
Everybody is as happy as Will Smith. If you feel strong enough about something, then you might put a little before you say exactly what.
So when Will Smith walked onto the Oscar stage in 2022 and shocked the world with his reaction toward Chris Rock, a different question quietly spread through hip-hop culture. Not spoken out loud at first, but whispered everywhere online. Would he have ever tried that with Eminem? As strange as it sounds, that question didn't come out of nowhere, because years earlier, long before the Oscars, before social media outrage cycles, before viral clips, there was a moment between Will Smith and Eminem that almost turned into something much bigger. To understand why, you have to understand who Eminem really was before the fame.
Never killed nobody in none of my records. I don't use no profanity in none of my records, and still I managed to get up here.
Eminem wasn't just another artist trying to break into the industry. He came out of Detroit, from environments where pressure was constant and survival wasn't theoretical. His rise wasn't backed by sitcom fame, movie studios, or a polished public image. It was fueled by raw storytelling, controversy, and an ability to say things other people avoided. By the late 1990s, while Hollywood was embracing Will Smith as its safest and most reliable star, Eminem was becoming the exact opposite. Loud, uncomfortable, impossible to ignore. At the same time, Will Smith was everywhere. In the late 90s, he wasn't just winning, he was dominating multiple worlds at once. Television, film, music. He turned the charm of the Fresh Prince into blockbuster power with movies like Men in Black and Independence Day.
Eminem. Ain't no rapper popping nothing about Eminem. Ain't nobody saying nothing. I'm not even gonna say nothing bad about Eminem, cause way too much stuff rhymes with rock, right? But Eminem don't even like his own mama. So Lord knows what he'll say about your black ass, okay? And Eminem's a white rapper, so his record gonna be on every station, the country station, the talk station. The black rappers just on Hot 97. Now you gotta watch where you sit, everybody. Can't sit 50 near Ja Rule. You can't sit Jay-Z near Nas. Everybody gotta watch out for. You got the Olsen twins over there, so then you gotta put R. Kelly way up there.
On the music side, he pulled off something no rapper at his level had ever done. He went multi-platinum, without leaning into controversy. No explicit language, no dark imagery, no industry drama. His 1997 album, Big Willie Style, sold over 10 million copies worldwide. Then Millennium followed in 1999 and pushed his success even further. Awards followed, Grammys followed. The message was clear. Will Smith had cracked a formula that made hip-hop safe for the mainstream, and he knew it. In February 2000, at the 42nd Annual Grammy Awards, Will Smith stepped on stage and said something that sounded harmless to most of the room. He proudly pointed out that he had never used profanity in his records and still reached the top. The crowd cheered. Media praised him. To many viewers, it sounded like inspiration, but not everyone heard it that way. Because at the same time, a 26-year-old rapper from Detroit named Marshall Mathers had just released the Slim Shady LP. That album wasn't polished, it wasn't clean, and it wasn't trying to be acceptable. It was chaotic, emotional, dark, and brutally honest. Where Will Smith represented control, Eminem represented confrontation. Where Will sold confidence, Eminem sold discomfort. His music spoke directly to anger, frustration, and survival, things that didn't fit neatly into Hollywood soundbites. So when Eminem heard Will Smith's statement about success without profanity, it didn't feel neutral to him. It felt like a line in the sand. Not necessarily personal, but symbolic. A comment that separated artists who were accepted from those who had to fight their way in.
He dissed the whole genre of rap.
Then came the moment that changed everything. In 2000, Eminem released The Real Slim Shady. In the middle of that record, he dropped a line that instantly became one of the most talked about lyrics of the year. It directly referenced Will Smith's image and success, and did so without apology. Radio stations scrambled to censor it. Parents complained. Media debates exploded. But among younger listeners, the reaction was the opposite. They embraced it. Because to them, Eminem wasn't just taking a shot at Will Smith. He was challenging an idea, that hip-hop needed to be cleaned up, softened, or filtered to be valid. That single line cracked open a much larger conversation about power in the industry, about who earned their position and who was protected by the system. While Will Smith traveled between red carpets and film sets, Eminem was dealing with non-stop scrutiny, legal pressure, public backlash, and constant attempts to silence or reshape his image. He wasn't trying to be liked. He was trying to be real. And from that moment on, fans began to ask a question that still lingers today. Was Will Smith simply confident in his success?
I have the accolades that connect to the performance of my music. I don't have the trophies that match how big the actual records are. The one Grammy I have is for Crack a Bottle. I couldn't even have that without him. You know, and that's why I have so much value for him, not just in my career, just in my life, because he's a guy that, one of my best friends, because I can trust that he's going to be honest with his constructive criticism when it's time to listen to the music before it goes out. He's the only person that did things that I wanted to do. He had the Marshall Mathers LP with 23 million records sold with flags all around the plaque. And I was like, yo, I want that. I want that.
Or was he careful about who he challenged? Because when it came to Eminem, history suggests one thing very clearly. Most people chose not to push their luck. As the conversation grew online, people started asking a different kind of question, not about lyrics or awards, but about presence. What would have happened if these two worlds had ever crossed face to face? Because while Hollywood initially treated Eminem like a novelty, the reality forming behind the scenes told a very different story. To many outsiders, Eminem first looked like shock value. Bleached hair, loud delivery, provocative bars. To Hollywood executives, he appeared temporary, another attention-grabbing act destined to fade. Will Smith, like many at the time, likely assumed the same thing. But that assumption ignored where Eminem was really coming from. Back in Detroit, Eminem wasn't moving on image. He was moving on structure. At the center of that structure was his closest ally, Proof. Proof wasn't just a friend or a hype man. He was deeply respected in Detroit's battle scene, known for his presence, his leadership in D12, and his ability to navigate environments where reputation mattered more than fame. Proof served as a bridge, translating Eminem's success into credibility in places where success alone meant nothing. Because of Proof, Eminem wasn't treated like an outsider in his own city. He moved with purpose, awareness, and protection rooted in trust rather than publicity. That foundation mattered more than most people realized. Then came the moment that changed everything. When Dr. Dre signed Eminem to Aftermath Entertainment, the shift was immediate. Dre didn't just provide beats, he provided legitimacy, resources, and a network that extended far beyond music. With Dre came business experience, industry respect, and a system built to last. Eminem was no longer a solo act. He became part of a machine. From that point on, Eminem's rise accelerated fast. Albums dominated charts. Public attention intensified. But so did pressure. His life wasn't insulated by Hollywood sets or controlled environments. He was dealing with real-world complications at the same time his career exploded, and that combination hardened him rather than softened him. By the early 2000s, Eminem wasn't just responding to critics through music. He was navigating intense scrutiny, legal challenges, and non-stop attention, all while maintaining a reputation for not backing down when challenged. His resilience wasn't performative. It was lived. Then another major piece clicked into place. In 2002, Eminem and Dr. Dre brought 50 Cent into their circle. This wasn't just a signing. It was a statement. 50 Cent arrived with his own history, his own mindset, and a presence that commanded respect in spaces where industry status didn't matter. Together, Shady Records, Aftermath, and Interscope formed a triangle of influence that reshaped the rap landscape. Behind every Eminem release stood a full support system. Legal teams, executives, strategists, and allies who understood power, optics, and leverage.
Seems to have seen it all happen. Can you tell me your name, sir?
Yeah, all I know is I'm upstairs, I'm listening to my Will Smith CD, and I seen all these flames going everywhere. You know what I'm saying? Hold on a minute, bitch.
You're destroying the
Hey, hold on a minute. Yo, Detroit what? Detroit what?
Okay, thank you, sir.
Detroit, baby.
So when Eminem spoke, it was never just one voice. It was an entire structure speaking with him. That reality became impossible to ignore during moments when old industry tensions surfaced. Figures tied to the previous era, particularly those associated with Death Row Records, still carried reputations that made rooms uncomfortable. Their presence alone was enough to change energy. But Eminem didn't shrink in those moments. Multiple accounts describe situations where others chose silence or distance, while Eminem stood steady. Not confrontational, but unmoved. That calm wasn't arrogance. It was confidence built on preparation and backing. One story in particular circulated widely. When a familiar figure from the death row era entered a space unannounced, the atmosphere shifted immediately. Some people left, others avoided eye contact. Eminem didn't react. He stayed where he was, and 50 Cent stayed right beside him. That moment sent a quiet message. Fear-based influence no longer worked the same way. What most fans didn't understand at the time was that Eminem's protection extended beyond traditional security. According to people familiar with the culture around Los Angeles, his safety network involved long-standing alliances, groups known for loyalty and discipline rather than visibility. These weren't just hired guards, they were relationships built on mutual respect and long-term understanding. People who made sure boundaries were respected before situations ever escalated. That's why Eminem moved freely, even in spaces others avoided. By then, the idea of him being a temporary figure had completely collapsed. Eminem wasn't just an artist. He was positioned, he was supported, and he wasn't easily pressured. Which brings us back to the original question people keep asking today. By the early 2000s, Will Smith and Eminem were living in completely different worlds, even though they occupied the same industry. Will was fully locked into Hollywood. Blockbuster films, award shows, red carpets, political events. His image was carefully managed by massive studios, teams of publicists, and corporate decision-makers whose main priority was brand protection. Eminem, on the other hand, was moving through pressure from every direction. His music was under constant scrutiny, his lyrics were debated publicly, and his presence made people uncomfortable in ways that couldn't be smoothed over with press releases. Where Will Smith represented polish and control, Eminem represented disruption and unpredictability. That contrast matters. So when Eminem referenced Will Smith in his music, Will chose silence. And looking back, many people now see that silence not as weakness, but as strategy. By that point, responding wouldn't have been a simple back and forth. It would have meant stepping into a conversation that Eminem controlled, creatively, culturally, and symbolically. To the public, Will's Grammy speech years earlier sounded positive and inspirational, a message about success without controversy. But behind the scenes, the industry was changing. Eminem didn't hear that moment as encouragement. He heard it as the system choosing a safer voice, a spokesperson who could deliver a message without shaking the structure. From Eminem's perspective, it wasn't personal, it was positional. He felt pressure from censorship boards, talk shows, edited performances, and non-stop criticism. Everything he said was dissected. Every move was monitored. And that environment pushed him further into defensiveness, not retreat. His response wasn't interviews or statements, it was music. When the Marshall Mathers LP dropped, it didn't just perform well, it reshaped the landscape. The numbers were historic, the reach was global, and the message was clear. Authenticity, even when uncomfortable, could not be ignored. Meanwhile, Will Smith slowly pivoted away from rap entirely. By the early 2000s, film became his primary focus. His music releases grew quieter. His attention shifted. The two worlds drifted further apart, rarely intersecting except at major events where distance was carefully maintained. Fans noticed, award shows, industry parties, public appearances. Both men were present, but never interacting. No photos, no greetings. Event planners reportedly made sure they were kept apart. Not because of open conflict, but because neither side wanted a moment that could be misinterpreted or escalate into something unnecessary. As time passed, Eminem's position only grew stronger. He expanded beyond music, entered film, and built a tightly connected circle of collaborators and allies who understood how to move carefully in high-pressure spaces. His approach became more calculated, more strategic, less reactive. Will Smith, protected by Hollywood infrastructure, never needed to operate that way. His safety came from image control. Eminem's came from awareness and preparation. That difference explains everything. Years later, when people revisited old moments, especially after public incidents involving Will Smith, the same question resurfaced again and again. Not out of mockery, but out of cultural memory. Why did some situations happen, and others never would have? The answer most people landed on was simple. Eminem wasn't just an artist you challenged casually. He represented a force that didn't play by traditional rules, not because of aggression, but because of influence. When he spoke, the conversation shifted. When he stayed quiet, people listened anyway. Some rivalries burn loudly and fade fast. Others never fully ignite, because one side understands the cost. And in this case, that quiet understanding shaped decades of distance. If you've made it this far, you already know this story was never really about one lyric or one award show moment. It was about power, Positioning and knowing when not to step into a fight you can't control. If this breakdown kept you locked in, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment with your take. Do you think Will Smith's silence was strategy, or did Eminem shift the balance that much? Stay tuned. We've got more deep dives coming.